February of next year before payment is due, whether it's a 25 Honda Pilot, $1,500 sales credit with rates as low as 3.49% or a $3,000 sales credit on the 25 Honda Ridgeline with rates as low as 0.99%. And again, you're not looking at any payments until February on that as well. And so many of the other vehicles, lease deals as low as $199 a month on 26 Honda CRVs, and the certified pre-owned Honda True Certified Dream Deal event, 1.99% APR. And of course, they've got the different applied credit situations that come into play there. With the Pinnager family at Pinnager Honda, South Campbell, just south of Walnut Lawn. Weather coming up in a moment. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 75. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 45. For your Wednesday, patchy fog in the morning, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 68. And taking a look at Thursday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with a high near 66.
Welcome to the show, everyone. United Nations Security Council passed a resolution yesterday in support of President Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan in Gaza, and Trump has been named chairman of the Board of Peace. There's just something about this that I find humorous because this is like of the world. It must drive the left absolute. And listen, it's the United Nations and titles, schmitles, but it's like the United Nations, something that the left is just. I mean, they've long held up the United Nations as the great arbiter of world peace, and the idea of not being involved with the United Nations or getting their permission to do anything is something that is just the antithesis of humanity, and to have Donald Trump voted by the Security Council 13-2 to be chairman of the Board of Peace over the Middle East is just it's just hilarious. I just find it to be hilarious, and all of these left-wing nuts, these conspiracy theory Project 2025ers that have stood on the side of roads with their signs that say "No Kings," among other things, and peace, ceasefire now, ceasefire now, ceasefire now. And whose plan gets approved? Donald Trump's, the man that they claim is Hitler and the most dangerous fiend in the world. It gets passed by the United Nations, the holier-than-thou to the left organization that can do absolutely no wrong, and Trump is titled chairman of the Board of Peace. It just can't get any better than that. I wonder if they're opposed to that, like Kings. They're going to have no chairman of the Board of Peace signs out there now. The resolution passed the council 13-2, endorsing Trump's plan, which Hamas agreed to on October 8th. And the president of Egypt and Qatar and Turkey officially endorsed at the signing. And then, of course, there were world leaders. It was big spectacle. Trump wrote in a post on Truth Social, "Congratulations to the world on this incredible vote of the United Nations Security Council just moments ago, acknowledging and endorsing the Board of Peace, which will be chaired by me and include the most powerful and respected leaders throughout the world. This will go down as one of the biggest approvals in the history of the United Nations, will lead to further peace all over the world, and is a moment of true historic proportions." Trump thanked all of the countries in the council, in addition to the countries that endorsed the resolution last week ahead of the vote, but are not necessarily on the council. And that includes Egypt, Jordan, Indonesia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates, saying thank you to the United Nations and all of the countries on the UN Security Council: China, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, Algeria, Denmark, Greece, Guyana, South Korea, Pakistan, Panama, Sierra Leone, Slovenia, Somalia, he added. U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz released a statement reading in part, "The board will coordinate the delivery of humanitarian assistance, facilitate Gaza's development, and support a technocratic committee of Palestinians responsible for day-to-day operations of Gaza's civil service and administration while the Palestinian Authority fully implements its reform program." The resolution today provides troop-contributing countries with the framework they need to move forward with the International Stabilization Force and global financial institutions, the mechanisms they need for channeling investment, respectively. The former will support a region free from Hamas's grip, and the latter, Gaza's construction and development. The path to prosperity, colleagues, requires security first. Security is the oxygen that governance, the developed, needs to live and thrive. The International Stabilization Force will stabilize the security environment, support the demilitarization of Gaza, dismantle terrorist infrastructure, decommission weapons, and maintain the safety of the Palestinian civilians. Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling the resolution passage a historic milestone. noting today's UN Security Council resolution endorsing President Trump's 20-point peace plan is a historic milestone in building a peaceful and prosperous Gaza governed by the Palestinian people, not Hamas, he wrote. Now, this, again, is specifically the plan itself. The existence of the plan is designed for a pathway to success. Now, that may seem obvious, right? You're like, well, of course. That's the whole point. It's all laid out there. But part of the brilliance of this plan is even if all parties don't comply, and by all parties, we're talking about Hamas, the plan itself is structured in a way that works against Hamas by marginalizing them. What this does is it separates Hamas from the Palestinians. This has long been the effectiveness of Hamas as a terrorist organization, conflating Hamas with the Palestinians. Many of us have argued that the best thing that could ever be done for the people in Gaza, for the Palestinians, is for Hamas to be eliminated, to no longer be in control. You know, you have this narrative out there by the left that the problem that the Palestinian people have been the Jews, has been Israel, that the reason that all of these problems exist in Gaza is because of Israel. And if only Israel would get out, then all things would be wonderful. And it has allowed Hamas to carry out all these terrorist attacks and get support not for Hamas, but for the cause. How many times have you heard people on the left chant the same chants as Hamas, make the same demands as Hamas, but when you note that they are supporting Hamas, they say, no, that's not what we're doing. We're not pro-Hamas. We're pro-Palestinian people. And the way that Trump crafted this deal is a way that separates the two. So you're no longer on the same side, whereas before they were one and the same, right? Because what Hamas was wanting was what the Palestinians was wanting. That's what we want, peace, and Hamas is calling for this ceasefire, and so that's what we want, and so it's all in the name of peace. Well, now what is in the name of peace is not what Hamas wants, because Hamas never wanted peace. It's just up until Trump crafted this plan that peels them off, doesn't peel them off, but drives a wedge between what is good and prosperous and positive for the people of Gaza and Hamas. Up until then, they have been able to Trojan horse their terrorism in the name of what is good for the Palestinian people. And this undoes that. And we're already seeing, because guess who's against this? Hamas. Hamas defiant in face of calls to disarm, endangering the Trump ceasefire. So this is nothing new, correct? Hamas always does this. But what is it that they are endangering by doing this? They can't now on the world stage, with all of Trump managing to get the world, particularly these Middle Eastern countries, to switch their support from Hamas/Gaza to where Trump wanted them, and that is on the side of, Gaza, which is separate from Hamas. And now Hamas, if they are against or violate the peace deal, they are actively against the Palestinian people. They are actively against the citizens of Gaza. And it is noteworthy that all of these left-wing activists and elected Democrats as well, who had been screaming at the top of their lungs for a ceasefire. These left-wing activists that stormed the Capitol on a number of occasions demanding a ceasefire. Everyone's on page with that now except for Hamas. Where are your protests now? The benefit of the peace deal that Trump crafted and now has the United Nations Security Council voting to endorse and support and implement is it also demonstrates all of these Democrat activists and the fact that they really actually were supporting Hamas. Now, a percentage of them supporting Hamas because they really truly are sympathizers with Hamas, while there are a portion of them who are the useful idiots who are used by terrorist organizations like Hamas and don't really realize that they're being manipulated. And then, of course, there's the segment of the Democrat population that just shows up to protest because they're told it's anti-Trump and have no clue whatsoever what they're protesting. But of the whole, what it shows and demonstrates is that the existence of those peace deal left-wingers out there calling for a ceasefire are full of crap. Because if they were genuine, they would be celebrating this. They would be saying, I hate Trump and still think he's evil, but got to give him credit. And they would be out there protesting Hamas and demanding that Hamas comply with the deal that they agreed to. But they're oddly silent. We can argue break down the percentages, exactly what the makeup of those Democrat activists are when it comes to a loyalty to Hamas versus just flat-out ignorance. But the one thing you can't escape is that they have been actively out there offering comfort, offering support to the Hamas cause, not the cause of the Palestinian people. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. those of you, and some of you have texting in just to keep you in the loop that if some of the texts don't get addressed, not that they all always do, but they have some sort of server errors going on. And I've noticed it with a couple of other formats as well. So, it's intermittent is the best way to describe the access we have to the incoming text messages. And so we'll continue to check them, but just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Now, I do want to note that there still are, as brilliant as the crafting of this peace deal that Trump was responsible for, that was passed by the Security Council, and at this point, there's really only one entity that is against it, and that is Hamas. And they are against it for a very good reason, because it turns the power of Gaza back to the people of Gaza and takes it out of the hands of the terrorist organization. It calls for them to disarm. And this may be a shock to a lot of people on the left. Hamas's goal wasn't really to liberate the people of Palestine. Liberate Palestine, liberate Palestine. There was only one entity suppressing the people of Gaza, and that was Hamas. And it still is Hamas. This is why Hamas is pushing back at this deal. Of course, what then occurs? Now, Trump, the 20-point peace plan, included, again, the requirement that they lay down their arms or go into voluntary exile so that the Palestinian people would actually be in charge of themselves and of Gaza. Well, what happens if they don't? And what Trump has reiterated is that, listen, if you don't, you're going to face a united international intervention to remove you from power. This is what's going to happen. We have all of these allies on our side. We have all of these people that have signed on, and we will remove you. There are many people who, rightfully so, question exactly which of the countries that have come as far as they have in allying with Israel on this and the actual citizens of Gaza, will they actually contribute, some of their own, quote, troops in order to do what is necessary to get Hamas out of there? Or will, and I imagine this is what Hamas is hoping for, that all of those countries will betray their word, they will betray their signatures, they will invalidate their credibility by backing down and saying, well, okay, I guess we don't want the fight that bad. We're not willing to go that far in order to make sure that the Palestinian people are actually liberated from the terrorist hold that Hamas has over them. There is one thing that I happen to find it's such a no-brainer. And it could potentially be used as justification to not stand the ground some of these other Middle Eastern countries in terms of getting Hamas out of there. And that is, according to polling data, Hamas has regained popularity in the Gaza Strip after reasserting its control of the territory. Well, yes, because they are openly executing people that they declare are not supporters of Hamas. That's kind of the point here. As soon as the ceasefire kicked in, that weekend, the very weekend, they began dragging from their homes people that were considered to be actual supporters of liberation and against Hamas control, and they were publicly executing them in the streets, making sure everyone understood, if you do not continue to support us, then this is what happens to you. When you do that, that tends to increase support when public polling is done. The polling and the outcome of the polling is done for only one purpose. Only one purpose. I mean, this is like polling women in Afghanistan as to whether or not they are happy with the Taliban in charge. I suspect the Taliban would get at least 4.7 stars out of 5. Or polling the people of North Korea, rather. Now, you've got different cultural components involved there. But the point here is the idea that people who know that they can be publicly executed if they aren't supportive of Hamas or any sort of entity, and that they are going to give clear and concise, honest answers as to whether or not they are supporters of that, Hamas. It's lunacy, and it's laughable that these polls would even be taken seriously in any sort of context. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 75. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 45. For your Wednesday, we'll see patchy fog in the morning, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 68. And taking a look at Thursday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with a high near 66.
Hotel of Terror. Now, I believe that Thursday, of course, Christy Fulnecki will be joining us, and as she does on Thursdays, and she is also the attorney that represents the owner of Hotel of Terror, and I believe that he may be joining us for part of her hour-long segment. At least as it stands now, it seems to be something that we are going to be having here. Just what's today? Tuesday, so a couple days away. And as I expected, the city appears to be fully prepared to once again do what it can to use its power in government in order to force this private business to do what it wants so that it can continue on with this Renew Jordan Creek project. This is one of the things I've learned about people in government. When they have access to other people's money, they love doing things with it. They internalize a vision of success by the more things they can do with your money. Whether that is buying up parks or stadiums or land for more parks or creating different facilities. And there's something that is part of the human brain that once a person gets into power, most people, not all, but most people are incapable of that siren song, being pulled into this desire to make things, to do things with your money, to build bigger, and to have the taxpayers on the hook for more stuff. And one of those projects, again, is the Renew Jordan Creek project, which is millions and millions and millions of dollars. And, of course, you're talking about upkeep and everything else. And if there is a private business in the way, a private business that actually creates jobs and brings in revenue and provides a service that people in the area really, truly want, and clamor for, well, they'll just steamroll over it. The news leader reporting, after years of negotiation and an earlier aborted attempt to exercise eminent domain, the city aims to condemn the building. The final proposal from Hotel of Terror owner Sterling Mathis asking for $5.5 million, which would include sale of the Hotel of Terror property and money to move the business to the Dungeons of Doom location. Several people stood in support of Mathis at the council meeting last night, called on the council to cease efforts to use eminent domain to take control of the building that houses the longtime haunted attraction. Supporters emphasized that Mathis should be fairly compensated for nearly half a century of running a business and attracting visitors to downtown Springfield, but the city, as predicted, not interested whatsoever. The city said that the decision to use eminent domain addresses two main goals: to replace a nearby bridge before safety concerns worsen and to alleviate flooding in downtown Springfield. Now, I can tell you that, again, ultimately this is about this Renew Jordan Creek project that they, again, activates that part of the brain to use your money to do neat things and to create neat things. And this is in their way. What they have done is they are shifting it to try to make it seem like, oh, no, this is just all about safety. This is about your safety. That's what this is about, because they recognize that they will win over a greater degree of support by telling you your lives are potentially in danger unless they swoop in and save you, as opposed to saying just because we want to. A press release sent out last night, Hotel of Terror calls out City of Springfield for bad faith actions threatening 47-year landmark. This is from Fulnecki Law. The owners of the Hotel of Terror, a 47-year Springfield landmark, are calling on the City of Springfield to halt its bad faith efforts that threaten the survival of the historic downtown attraction. For decades, the Mathis family has operated the Hotel of Terror without incident. But since the city began its Renew Jordan Creek project, and especially after citizens overturned the city's attempted eminent domain taking, the business has faced a series of actions that appear designed to force its closure. Despite more than 40 years without any flooding, the property suddenly began suffering water infiltration only after the city altered the creek's topography. The city received repeated notice of the damage, but the city failed to act. The city has tried to acquire the Hotel of Terror property through eminent domain, with negotiations ongoing since at least 2019. In February of 23, the city council voted to begin the eminent domain process to seize the property, but the decision was repealed in May of 2023 after citizens petitioned for a referendum, but the city has resumed efforts to acquire the property through eminent domain once again. At the same time, the city has imposed constantly shifting, increasingly burdensome, and often unnecessary regulatory demands, including special use permit conditions and code requirements that exceed those applied to similar businesses. These requirements have been changed multiple times, often with little explanation. Most recently, the city has rushed the timeline for relocation discussions, giving the owners compressed deadlines while simultaneously raising new compliance obstacles. Mr. Mathis's attorney sent a comprehensive $3.5 million settlement proposal to the city. Just 2 days later, the city publicly announced plans to pursue eminent domain. The proposed ordinance is scheduled for first reading, well, this was what was last night, only 7 days after receiving the proposal and without any meeting or substantive response from the city. Quote, instead of sitting down to discuss our proposal, the city immediately went to the media and announced condemnation proceedings, said Christy Fulnecki, attorney for Sterling Mathis. Quote, this is not good faith negotiation required by Missouri law. The combination of shortened timeline and heightened demands has placed the family's business in an impossible position. The pattern's clear, said owner Sterling Mathis. Instead of working with us in good faith, the city keeps accelerating deadlines and adding new requirements that no other haunted attraction has to meet. After 47 years of contributing to Springfield, we should not be treated this way. I would add, no private business or citizen should. Through counsel, the Mathis family has submitted a formal settlement proposal that reflects the true cost of repairing city-caused property damage and rebuilding the business at a new location. The family has made clear they're willing to cooperate, but not at the expense of their livelihoods or their rights. Quote, the city's actions show a troubling disregard for fairness, said attorney Fulnecki. Rushed timelines, escalating demands, and failure to address the flooding the city caused are not the actions of a government acting in good faith. The Mathis family deserves just compensation and a transparent, honest process. The Hotel of Terror remains committed to serving Springfield and calls on city leaders to engage in genuine, good faith negotiations that respect both Missouri law and nearly 5 decades of community history. Now, what appears to be happening here, and I'm sure this will come as no surprise, is that a reasonable agreement at one point was informally made for an amount of, I think, around $2 million. And then, after that, the city began putting these additional financial burdens in the way, saying, okay, well, now there's this compliance issue and there's this regulatory issue, and all of a sudden it forced the cost to skyrocket. And then they began finagling. This is, according to the Hotel of Terror folks and attorneys and some others that I believe spoke at the council meeting last night. We'll cover some of their quotes. I think the news leader had some of those quotes. They just essentially appeared to be making it virtually impossible for the owners of the Hotel of Terror to come into any sort of agreement with them because of the constant moving of the goalpost. I think a fair inference for this is that the city feels as if they can get what they want accomplished without having to give up as much I don't even think the money is so much of an issue for them as it is proving a point that when it comes to small businesses and locally owned businesses in Springfield, the city is in charge. This is not a city that is a liberty-minded, small business owner-minded community. This is a government-first community. And arguably, whether intended or not, this does send a message to other small businesses. This is what happens when you do not comply. This is what happens when you are not obedient. I would argue that over the years, and you know that for years and years and years, I've been highlighting the extreme struggle small businesses have in dealing with Springfield. And over again, and I get it, I get frustrated, but I understand it. These business owners are afraid to speak out because they know what the city can do to them. And this constant effort to destroy this business is something that doesn't go unnoticed by other small businesses in Springfield. Whether intended or not, this is a message that continues to be received by local business owners in Springfield. You don't F with the city because the city government will destroy you. Going to get a traffic update more ahead. I'm Nick Reed. Now, the competing narratives over the, quote, cost necessary in order to successfully and intact relocate the Hotel of Terror is you've got the city apparently saying, well, we kind of came up with this agreement, but they keep raising the price, to which the response is, well, because afterwards you kept adding cost. Yeah, so that's what happened. The news leader writes, Rufus Louderback, an architect hired by Mathis, the owner of Hotel of Terror, and involved in the talks, recounted discussions with the city where requirements for the move kept changing and increasing the cost. Mathis's current request for $3.5 million, city staff said, was based on an appraisal the owner received in August of nearly $1.3 million, $358,000 of which was just the building itself. City staff said the appraisal has not been shared with the city, and the appraisal varies from $315,000 appraisal the city received from or for the building in June. Louderback said, quote, "It is unacceptable that the city made significant changes to their requirements, yet now make it out as if the owner was the one changing things." He said he reviewed the cost associated with the relocation and argued the proposal was reasonable and, quote, "far less than what he had recommended Mathis actually even pursue." So according to the architect, he's saying, I don't think the request from the owner of Hotel Terra is enough. I told him that he should request more. Jamie Melton, Mathis's general contractor, said the $3.5 million was an adequate request for moving a 12,000 square foot attraction. He said currently replacing commercial property costs $400 per square foot, which would raise the price tag even further. Quote, "There was little instances of where every little change, where we needed an elevator, and then we needed a staircase, and we needed all of these things, and those things compile," Melton said. "And as long as time keeps going, the bill is only going to get worse. Price of construction and material is outrageous." The council is expected to vote on initiating eminent domain proceedings at its next meeting, which is December 15th. Now, we've got to get a traffic, and then, so what happens after that, and what remedy do the citizens of Springfield have in fighting against this, should they want to, after traffic? All right, now, like I said, we'll have Christy Fulnecki on Thursday, and hopefully we'll have the Sterling Mathis, the owner of Hotel of Terra, on as well, so they can elaborate on much of this. Now, the council is expected to go ahead once again and vote on initiating eminent domain proceedings at its next meeting, December 15th, making sure that locally owned businesses in Springfield understand when it really comes down to it who's going to get their way. Now, if that vote is successful, and I suspect it will be, Mathis had previously told the news leader that he plans to pursue another referendum petition, which is what prevented this from going forward before. Now, you get enough signatures, it goes to a vote of the people. Before that part occurred, there were enough signatures gathered. The city backed off and said, no, we'll just reverse our course. I suspect the reason that happened is because they knew overwhelmingly they would lose. And so they had to figure out, essentially reapproach this in a way that they felt would increase the likelihood with which they can crush the business. Now, if that is what occurs and the referendum petition is pursued once again, it requires Mathis to collect a number of valid signatures from registered Springfield voters equal to or greater than 10% of the total number of persons voting in the last general municipal election in April within 30 days of the council's vote per the city charter. With the end of the year, that means Mathis's potential signature gathering would overlap with the holidays, which I think it's possible they timed it out that way, thinking that with people traveling in the holidays and it might be more difficult for him to gather signatures. It could go that way, but I think also with lots of people out shopping and so forth, it could potentially even work in his favor. If he collects the required number of signatures, then again, council can either vote to repeal its ordinance as they did before or send the question to the voters. And if it goes forward to an eminent domain proceedings, a court-appointed 3-member commission would weigh all the evidence appraisals and then eventually make a decision as to what they think is a, quote, fair price. So this is where things currently stand, with the city doing what it can to make its point to business owners in the city of Springfield. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. There is a what's called a bombshell report regarding the would-be assassin of Donald Trump, the one in Pennsylvania, that seems contrary to what it is the American public had been told, and there was almost this just presentation of, yeah, I mean, it's weird. The guy really wasn't on social media. We don't know anything about him, to this report that there's crap tons of information about this guy and how he went from a apparent raving lunatic online, but was a Trump supporter, to slowly shifting to the left. And lo and behold, that's when he actually became violent and decided to become an assassin. We'll fill those details in. And I don't know if there's going to be any sort of official reaction from the FBI on this, but increasingly I think people are losing faith, and it's not even an anger thing, but just this faith that even under Trump and even under leadership of people like Patel and Dan Bongino, that it just doesn't feel like we're like different people are in charge, even though different people are in charge. And I don't think people doubt. Maybe some do, but I think most Trump supporters have a degree of faith in Patel's motivations and loyalties to the country and so forth, and Dan Bongino as well, and some of these. But I just, increasingly, there is this sense that it's never going to change. And this certainly feeds into that doubt. So we'll get to that coming up. Ozarks elder law, not planning at all for your own demise, your own death, your own passing, your own transition, however it is you'd like to refer to it, is something that certainly is not a gift to your family. It's not uncommon for people who care about family and want to leave behind little burden will already pay ahead of time for their burial plot, and they'll pay ahead of time for the, be it a casket or be it cremation, because they think whenever I pass, I don't want my family to have to worry about that stuff. They're going to be sad that I'm gone. They're going to be in mourning. The last thing they need to worry about is dealing with a bunch of paperwork and having to pay some bills in order to find a burial plot, and so they take care of that. But oftentimes, that is the least of the hassles. The biggest gift that you can give is clarity and pre-planning when it comes to everything that you leave behind, because it's got to go somewhere. And you may not think that your family cares, but it can go one of two directions. You may have a family that you didn't even realize want some of the things you leave behind. Or on the other hand, they may not want to have to deal with it. Like, they don't care, but if you don't have it all taken care of legally in writing, suddenly it becomes a burden that they didn't want to deal with. And it's just something that becomes a tremendous hassle during a time of what is generally mourning. And the solution, one easy document. So in that event, when you are gone, it's immediately taken care of. No courts, no attorneys, no fighting. It's Ozark Elder Law. They can take care of it for you. What does it cost to do that? The consultation costs you nothing to find out what it cost. And then it's one cost. So you don't get into it only to find yourself being nickeled and dimed to death. Free consultation. You can find any of their 10 area locations on their site, as well as set up that consultation at ozarkselderlaw.com. Talking in the last segment about this relentless effort by the city of Springfield to violate the wishes of what they recognize as community sentiment and the property ownership rights of the owner of Hotel of Terror. And I think that this is, at the same time this renewed effort is underway to eminent domain its way into getting what it wants, has extinguished or is extinguishing any hope that some of the business owners in Springfield have had, that having a mayor who understands what it's like to be a business owner in Springfield might give just a little bit of relief to business owners in Springfield. I know during the election and, the world that so many of these people, particularly in Springfield local government, are in, it's a different world than the vast majority of us and a vast majority of small business owners. They connect up with a few that are influential, that are very active, that may be part of certain organizations, and they choose to believe that that is a representation of what all local business owners in Springfield think and feel. And I know that to some degree, there wasn't really any groundswell of excitement about the last mayoral race in Springfield, and frankly, there hasn't been for some time. People in Springfield have largely given up on the idea that local government is any way responsive to the community at large, and so it is an attitude of what difference does it make? And even if we get one or two in there that is going to be a representation of the people, we've seen what happens to those individuals. They essentially get run out. They get marginalized, and it's just ineffective. And so a lot of people have given up. But I know in the lead up to the mayoral election, and people, many of which were small business owners or ran small businesses, would ask, well, what do you think on this? What do you think? And just, I was always more interested in, well, what do you think? And it was oftentimes met with a shrug, but there was oftentimes the caveat that, well, I guess, there's maybe some hope if we get a someone who was a small business owner or business owner in Springfield who get in that position of mayor, because of how difficult the city makes it for small business owners. And that being Schrag, who the owner, and I think he's still a minority owner of Mother's Brewery. And I suspect that at this point, any hope that business owners in Springfield had, that having, quote, one of their own in the position of mayor in Springfield was going to give them any sort of relief whatsoever, I think that has pretty much been nixed. And unfortunately, that is oftentimes what happens when people. It's almost like these some of these liberal female athletes that succeed and they get all their endorsements. Rapinoe is maybe a good example, who played soccer and got tons of endorsements and rolling in the money and retires, and then comes out against protecting female sports. Well, she already had her success. She's one of the club now, so she doesn't have to worry about having her rights protected. And many times business owners that will get into powerful positions end up adopting that same sort of mentality. It's like they made their way into the country club, and so they turn their back on the places from where they came. And listen, I don't know the motivations, the mindset of the Springfield mayor, but it certainly is clear that there is no loud voice in support of small businesses, particularly when it comes to the Hotel of Terror situation. Quite absent, the business owner is in representation. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 75. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 45. For your Wednesday, patchy fog in the morning, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 68. And taking a look at Thursday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with a high near 66.
A new bombshell has dropped in the case of Thomas Matthew Crooks, the individual who attempted to assassinate President Donald Trump in Pennsylvania last year. Ever since the shooting, of course, the public has largely been blind as to what it is that we know. I mean, of course, Biden was president during that period of time, and so I don't think it was necessarily a surprise to a lot of Americans that we were pretty much told, golly gee, we just can't figure anything out. We think he was just some random guy with no political affiliations whatsoever, had no political beliefs. This was a large part of the narrative. That he was an individual that, just for some reason decided that he was going to kill the president of the former presidential candidate, and potential future president of the United States. That of all the people, that's who he chose. Now, I don't know if you know the history of assassins, be it worldwide or even here in the United States, in which there have been so many would-be assassins that most people aren't even aware of. We know of the big successful ones. About Lincoln and JFK, attempt on Reagan. But, there was an attempt to hijack an airliner during the Nixon administration by, I think, Samuel Bick, I want to say was the name of that would-be assassin. And it was going to fly it into the White House to take out Nixon. Gerald Ford had, Manson chick. I think she actually just died, in fact. Sarah Jane Moore, Squeaky Fromm, one of the two. And other former successful assassins. But there's one thing that they all have in common. there was just a slight political motivation behind it. And the idea, not that it's impossible, that you're going to have someone who decides that of all of the people on the planet, family members, neighbors, people at school, that choosing the president was totally and completely random for no political purpose whatsoever, again, doesn't mean that it's not possible, but it just seems a little bit like, are you sure? Have you looked into this as deeply as potentially you can? Well, it turns out, apparently, based off of this new report, the New York Times, or the New York Post, rather, has much information on this, that he was very, very, very political. In fact, he, at one point, when he was not killing people or attempting to kill people, and he did, actually, wasn't the intended target, but did carry out one murder in that assassination attempt against Trump. But when he was a rabid Trump supporter, he wasn't trying to kill people. It wasn't until he got persuaded to become a lefty. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. According to the New York Post, then FBI Director Christopher Wray told Congress after the July 13th attack that the Bureau had found nothing in Crook's online history that pointed to a motive or political ideology. Like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. We just can't find anything. A week later, Wray's deputy, Pat Abate, told Congress that comments posted on one of Crook's social media accounts, quote, appear to reflect anti-Semitic and anti-immigration themes to espouse political violence and are described as extreme in nature. Thanks to an enterprising source who uncovered Crook's hidden digital footprint, we can see that Abate actually misled Congress by omission because he left out an entire section of Crook's online interactions from January to August 2020 when he did an ideological backflip and went from rabidly pro-Trump to rabidly anti-Trump and then went dark, never seeming to post again. Among the 17 accounts uncovered by the source used by the New York Post were ones on YouTube, Snapchat, Venmo, Zelle or Zelly, GroupMe, Discord, Google Play, Quizlet, Chess.com, and Quora. The online interactions from when Crooks was ages 15 to 17 give a better understanding of his evolution into an assassin and invite more questions about what or who reverses ideology. The source telling the Post the danger Crooks posed was visible for years in public online spaces. His radicalization, violent rhetoric, and obsession with political violence were all documented under his real name. The threat wasn't hidden. However, a deeper dive revealed that Crooks was not simply some unknowable lone actor. He left a digital trail of violent threats, extremist ideology, and admiration of mass violence, according to the source. Crooks frequently wrote social media posts in which he promoted the idea of assassinating government officials. Yet his comments did not raise any alarms. But even more disturbing is that none of these details were mentioned in the congressional report published in December. The attempted assassin had been an ardent Trump supporter between the age of 15 and 17. In a 2019 social media post, he said Trump is the literal definition of patriotism. Crooks also, at the time, posted vitriol against Democrat officials, especially progressive lawmakers. He wished a, quote, quick, painful death to all the deplorable immigrants and anti-Trump congresswomen who don't deserve anything this country has given them. He even promoted the idea of murdering Democrats. The New York Post reports that Crooks' political views took a turn in 2020 when he began criticizing Trump. The first time he criticized Trump was on January 23, 2020, when he commented on a video of law professor Jonathan Turley talking about Trump's first impeachment. Crooks wrote, "Keep in mind the only reason we may know about any of this is because of Trump's stupidity." He started describing Trump supporters as a cult. Golly gee, where would he get that rhetoric? Quote, "How can you people call others sheep, but you are too brainwashed to realize how dumb you are, he wrote on February 26, 2020. Quote, I mean, literally, you guys sound like a cult at times. The same day, he described Trump as a racist. Once again, wonder where that verbiage comes from. By April of 2020, Crooks was constantly criticizing Trump's pandemic response, saying he was too slow and everything he's doing now should have already been done. He also suggested terrorism-style attacks, such as planting bombs in government buildings. Again, this is stuff that he posted under his own name on social media. Even more bizarre was that Crooks had reportedly developed a furry fetish and had been delving into gender ideology. Well, that's a shock. The report states that he began using the pronouns they, them for himself on a platform called DeviantArt, which is popular with the, quote, furry community, in which members are interested in animals with human characteristics. The would-be assassin also befriended neo-Nazis, according to the New York Post, members of a Norwegian Nazi group, encouraging Crooks' radicalization, which, of course, fits in nicely with the anti-Semitism we would see by left-wing activists on college campuses. Now, there is a lot about this that needs to be discussed. And I heard, and this was very worrisome to me, I heard a member of the Senate, I believe from Oklahoma. Actually, I read it, in which he was dismissing all of this, saying he trusts the government, he trusts the FBI, not some reporters. Now, I'm not saying that the press should always be the default. This is the New York Post. I will note they were the one sole voice reporting on the Hunter Biden laptop that we were told by the FBI was fake and didn't exist. I think it is very, very concerning to have a Republican member of the Senate dismiss this in the same manner that the left was dismissing the Hunter Biden laptop when the New York Post was reporting on that. There are a couple aspects of this that that absolutely require answers. That coming up. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. For those of you who work in the HVAC industry, if you're just now waking up, you're heading to work, and you're like, you know what? my company sucks. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air, they are currently hiring. Russell is for sure looking for one service tech, maybe two. So if you are currently in the HVAC industry and you're ready for a change of pace, reach out to Russell today. They're locally owned, they're family owned, and they do offer competitive wages. And of course, for the rest of you, if you are needing the HVAC expertise from Foreman Mechanical, whether you need a service repair, indoor air quality testing, or maybe this is the year that you upgrade your unit, the Foreman team, they have got you covered for all of your HVAC needs. Now, to schedule your appointment or maybe to submit your application, you can do that at foremanmechanical.com. And of course, you can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
The New York Post has this story regarding online postings that had been made for years from Thomas Crook, who shot Trump at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. And what we had been told by then FBI Director Wray under the Biden administration is that, golly gee whiz, there's just no social media info we can find on this guy. There's nothing there. Don't know what to tell you. And all of the efforts and resources that we have at the Federal Bureau of Investigation have found that there's nothing. A week later, congressional testimony from his assistant saying, well, we did find some anti-Semitic stuff on there. It turns out, apparently, according to sources to the New York Post, that there were, 17? Let me get the number here. There were numerous, I want to say it was 12 or 17, 17 accounts. 17 accounts uncovered by one source in which he was, under his own name, posting pretty extreme political perspectives. And in the very beginning, when he was 15, 16, 17 years old, he was very pro-Trump, but then he became very anti-Trump, and that, of course, is when the violence came in. And what we've learned is he was just, this is what we have consistently found with the assassins of, be it Christians in schools or, the Charlie Kirks or Trump or, anyone that is considered a Republican or MAGA or, anything along these lines. It's all talking points from the Democrats. Trump is a racist. Trump is this. Trump is an idiot. Trump is going to destroy. It's the same stuff over and over again. And so I think that makes it clear why during the election cycle, the Biden people did not want the world to see and the American people to see that it was their rhetoric that was being used by the would-be assassin, because they already recognized during that summer that this was going to be helpful to Donald Trump. The last thing that they needed was for people to recognize, oh, he's one of ours. As obvious as that was, it's still allowed, by covering that up, the media to run around and say, well, there's no proof. We don't know what motivated him. Christopher Wray testified that there's no evidence whatsoever. Well, that all turns out apparently to be untrue. So the obvious, what did they know and when did they know it? Now, just the revelations themselves bring up a lot of other questions. We've got to get a traffic update, and then I'll share those. Pyramid Roofing Company talk at text line 447 KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 75. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 45. For your Wednesday, patchy fog in the morning, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 68. And taking a look at Thursday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with a high near 66.
New York Post this story yesterday regarding the attempted assassin of Trump, Crooks, and the fact that despite what we had been told under the Biden administration, in which there was just no digital footprint, there's just some crazy kid didn't have any sort of political ideology one way or another, apparently did, and under his own name, posting for years what would be considered radical political positions. And he started out apparently as a young kid, 15, 16 years old. He was a supporter of Trump, but apparently after listening to the left's perspective, began to adopt that because he was regurgitating those talking points. And that, of course, is when he turned violent and decided killing was the option. And Christopher Wray, of course, so the obvious questions here. I mean, in fact, they're so obvious, it seems pointless in asking. The FBI had to know this. The FBI had to know this. How could the FBI not know this? I suppose one could entertain the notion that somehow the FBI was run by such completely incompetent individuals. But again, we're talking about the same FBI that went around telling social media sites, you better not post that Hunter laptop story because it's fake information. It's coming from the Russians. It's not true. When, of course, it was true. I'm sorry, if you are and I don't know legally if there's any sort of recourse, but it just seems to me if you are the director of the FBI and you, along with others, are covering up for an attempted assassin of the President of the United States, I think there ought to be some repercussions for that. You know, if it turned out, let's say, it's just a random person. Turns out that there's a shooting at a local gas station. And the shooter injures one person, injures another, and kills another. And then that person comes to my home, and I help them cover it up by, destroying evidence, covering up evidence for them. And it turns out that gets discovered, that I was helping them. I was making sure that those who would hold that individual accountable did not find out about any evidence that might help convict that person. I would go to prison for that. It's called aiding and abetting. And here you have, now, of course, the individual was killed. So in terms of prison time or accountability, the actual shooter, Crooks, there's nothing to be done there. But to have the director of the FBI, unless, of course, he was lied to, which I highly doubt that was the case, but obviously someone, and perhaps multiple people within the FBI, were covering this individual's tracks, his digital tracks, and testified before Congress in a manner that was covering for the assassin's tracks by telling them that no digital footprint, we can't figure out the motivation of this one. Because this, of course, then leads to the absolute logical line of questioning and curiosity that if the FBI was covering up the fact that he was posting on social media under his own name threats to Trump and, all of the anti-Trump rhetoric and so forth, well, was he communicating with other people? Did he, I mean, what sort of communication was there? This lone gunman thing, I'm sorry, we can't trust this, oh no, he acted alone, coming from the same people who told us that there was no digital footprint on the guy, or that there wasn't any digital footprint in terms of where his political ideologies may lay. And I don't know if there is just a need for this information to settle, but it just seems a bit shocking to me that from some Republicans, saying, what the hell is this? We immediately need to get to the bottom of this. And this approach of almost just ignore it. It's as if I think some of us are living in this completely different world. Am I living in a different world where this somehow is not a massively huge revelation? It's this weird scenario where you have what, all of the evidence, or dare I say proof, that in some capacity there was a cover-up. And it's just what are you going to do? No one seems interested. No one is. Christopher Wray, these hearings, I think he certainly needs to be brought once again forth to answer for this, are you going to once again tell us you didn't know about this information? And how far in advance did they know? Did they know ahead of time? And I think one of the bigger components to this is, if Congress and the American people were lied to about what information was on social media by the assassin, the would-be assassin, were we lied to about any potential conspirators, co-conspirators, anybody else involved, anyone giving him direction, anyone, giving him any sort of aid and support? Or are we, as the American people, going to be treated like, well, now let's not be conspiracy? Are you out of your mind? This is the thing to me that I think Kash Patel needs to be called to testify on. Not because necessarily he's implicated in any sort of wrongdoing, but I kind of want to know what the current director of the FBI, appointed by Donald Trump, has to say about, is this the first he's hearing about this? Has he been aware of this information and evidence? And if so, why was it that this was not revealed to? Because this is the problem. Let's say you're the director of the FBI. You're Kash Patel. And you find all of this. And let's say, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out the reasons that this is playing out the way that it is. And you make the determination, the judgment call that, well, the FBI is already just so tattered and we're doing the best that we can we're actually making some real legitimate changes here and we're getting it back to an institution that can be trusted, and this is just going to hurt its credibility. Well, what the hell do you think happens to the credibility when we learn that this is more information that was hidden from us, especially if we find out that you did know about it but decided to hold it from us in the name of the credibility for the FBI? Now, I don't know if that's the case. I don't think that this is the problem I'm facing as I try to envision the different scenarios here. One is Kash Patel was fully aware of all of this information, did learn it, but decided to keep it from the American people for some reason. And even if the reasons were reasons that were noble, it is not good. It simply, it's almost even worse than what we've learned before, because there was this belief or this hope amongst many of the American people that new leadership was going to change all of that, keeping things hidden from the American people when it comes to this stuff. And it's, to me, a message that it doesn't matter who's in charge, they're always going to be corrupt no matter what. Or maybe he didn't know at all. And that means that there are clearly some still very, very serious problems within the FBI. But I tell you what you can't do is you can't ignore it and you can't downplay it. I mean, you can, but those are not positive outcomes. To try and dismiss this as being somehow irrelevant or dismiss this as, because this, it's sort of like the Epstein thing. The Epstein thing isn't about Epstein anymore. It's about all of the other people that were involved in keeping things covered up and and the people who have gotten away with things. And it's not about it's not about crooks, this particular part of it. It's about the FBI. It's about those that apparently were helping cover up his motivations for this. That's what this is about now. And you can't even begin to hope to restore any sort of faith in an institution like the FBI without directly addressing this stuff in a very serious manner. And I say this to Republican to anyone who tells themselves that they would like for Americans to at least have a little hope for the future, to at least have some faith that there are some people that are worth supporting because they can turn things around. If that is what you want to do as a leader in this country, an elected official or the head of some division of then you can't just let this stuff go to the wayside. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. How'd you like a great home loan or a great refinance or a great reverse mortgage? All of that. Your portal is iwantagreathomeloan.com. The site itself, of course, that is a great place to get started when it comes to the process, but also to learn a lot of great information. And here's the thing I would recommend if you're still unsure about the interest rate situation, and maybe in your head you've already reached out to the characters and their team, and you're like, you know what, but I still just, for whatever reason, you decide, nope, until interest rates hit this point, I'm not going to do it. You can go ahead and have them start the process. So all of that stuff is done. All of the paperwork is done. Everything is done. So once that moment comes, bam, you're out of the gate and ready to go. Instead of then being behind the curve by starting the process. Because guess what's going to happen? There's a lot of people out there just like you who have in their minds, well, I'm going to wait until this occurs. And so when there is that announcement and home loan interest rates drop, you're not going to be the only one standing in line. And that means you're going to have a marketplace that is, I don't want to say flooded, but certainly an increase in consumers out there. And the best thing you can do for yourself is to be ahead of all of that, even if it's by a day or two, by having all that paperwork filled out and the characters will just sit on it, knowing that trigger moment so they can get things underway for you. iwantagreathomeloan.com. Some of your text messages on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Nick brings up a point that has scared me for many years. Everyone used to talk about how Biden was the smartest person in the room when he was president. We all know he had mental issues and problems, but what if he was the smartest person in the room? Is it possible that a lot of people in the government are complete idiots and totally incompetent? I don't know what is scarier, that or that they would be so biased. And I think that's a legitimate question. We oftentimes, because we assign nefarious intent to so much of what goes on because we know the motivation behind so many of these people. We know what motivates them, and it is nefarious. But then you look at some of these, like people like Kamala Harris, and you listen to her, or Karine Jean-Pierre, who is a spokesperson, but nonetheless, and even some elected members of Congress, you listen to the things that they say, and it's very jarring at how stupid they really truly are. And you combine stupidity with evil intent, then you have a whole nother cake. And so I think that and I'm the same way as the person who texted in there, I often see it as a binary choice. All right, are they really this stupid or are they this nefarious and evil? And sometimes I leave out the fact that they can be both at the same time. And there is an argument that if they are evil yet dumb, that at least limits to some degree their ability to be as effective as they could if they were intelligent and evil. But I don't know. I don't know. Neither of them are good, but this is unfortunately what we as Americans have been facing for some time. Don't forget about my problem with all of the Thomas Crooks information is, why has it taken so long to come out with so many backups have been written over and replaced? I don't trust anything. Don't forget about the parents. They shut up, lawyered up, and have gone radio silent. Why also was his body cremated in 10 days? Who released the body to do so? And like I said, these are legitimate questions anyhow. These are legitimate questions to ask, even if government has proven itself to be trustworthy. But given government has proven itself to not be trustworthy, those aren't just legitimate questions. Those are required. And Dan Bongino said on his podcast pre-FBI appointment, he thought these security breaches had happened at previous Trump events, and it was just a matter of time before an assassin exploited the breaches. That was based on his Secret Service background. That would indicate an intentional effort by our government to put then-candidate Trump's life in jeopardy. That is chilling. It also provides a reason to protect our government and not come clean on what actually happened here. And I think that is worth exploring. I think that what I'm inferring from that statement is, what if, let's say you're Patel, you're Bongino, you're these people, you're Trump even, and part of your goal is to reestablish some credibility, legitimately so, in these institutions. But you find out information that is so damaging, perhaps a conspiracy within the government to, at the very least, make it easy to assassinate Trump, that you feel it would do such irreparable harm that you will never be able to restore those institutions. And I could see a person saying, I don't, which direction do we go? Do we keep that covered up for the sake of preventing the complete and utter destruction of any hope that this country will have any credibility with its own people any longer? Do we just, or for the sake of reviving things, now that we got good people in charge, we keep that covered up because it will destroy any hope that we have of making things better again? I think that those are warranted discussions to be had, whether or not that's a potential situation that we're in right now. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. A traffic update. All right, another hour straight ahead. After news, I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 1041. Hey, everyone, welcome. My name is Nick Reed. There was a question posed on the Pyramid Roofing Company Talk and Text line in reference to the report from the New York Post saying that what we've been told all this time about the crooks, the attempted assassin of Trump, and that there was no evidence, no social media footprint indicating any sort of political ideology. And according to the New York Post, that couldn't be any further from the truth, that he had 17 separate, that they received from one source, accounts on social media, and that he actually began in his teenage years, like 15, 16, he was pro-Trump. But then as he got darker, he became anti-Trump, pro-leftist, and that is when he decided killing was the thing to do. And you know, there are a number of other things as well, including the transgender angle, which once again pops up, though we're told we can't talk about that because that's meaningless. And this is all very massive, and it must be addressed. And I think Kash Patel needs to address, as the director of the FBI, is this news to him as well? If so, how is that the case? Or did he know about it but decide to keep it hidden from the public? And if so, why was that? And the text coming in saying, well, could they still be trying to find the person or people who are in positions that are undermining the administration? So maybe keeping things quiet in order to continue to investigate. That could be a reason. I don't know how that would necessarily help. I don't know. It's just, again, the institution's reputation is so damaged. Already, I think many people recognize that it would take generations for it to regain any sort of trust amongst a significant portion of the American population. Certainly, the level of trust that existed, prior to the revelations of, I'd say pre-James Comey. James Comey and revelations regarding him and his attempt to frame Trump and use the FBI to spy on Trump, that really revealed to the American people a level of corruption that I think definitely generations for them to overcoming that reputation. And not to say that the FBI wasn't that corrupt before, but this is just when it all became very apparent. Was because of that period of time and those revelations. And even if it is a genuine approach of believing, well, we should not release this information because we believe it may hinder our efforts to clean up the FBI, as unfair as it may be, I still believe that sort of explanation will further the belief many Americans have that you just can't believe anything they say. You just can't. Because they will cover things up. They will cover up things that are significant and that involve events that we are aware of. It's different if they're investigating something that the public isn't aware is going on. Like an attempted terrorist attack. And, well, we don't want to freak people out. We got to, and we don't want them to know that we know and so forth. But when it's so out in the public and everyone knows about the event, I just think that it is, I don't know. That whole institution probably could just go away and be completely started anew as some new organization, and it would probably be better off. Sort of like in MSNBC trying to rebrand itself. And even if you have some people in charge that recognize what the problem is and that they need to be less biased, it's like, because the brand is so damaged, even if you do populate it with leadership that is on the straight and narrow, can MSNBC really be a relevant news source ever again? Or is it so badly damaged you just have to start from scratch? And I think that is where the FBI is right now with many in America. These are all legitimate perspectives and questions that have been, sent in, I should say, at least in my assessment of things. I want to, coming up, talk about a program that was executed under the U.S. Attorney's Office's Project Safe Neighborhoods in Northern District of Illinois. And it's because it has to do with federal firearm indictments. And so the federal firearm indictments under that Project Safe Neighborhoods in Northern Illinois is up 292%. 292%. And ironically, this is something that shows that we do not need more gun control. Now, that may seem counter to conventional wisdom, but in fact, it is not at all. And it shows that we don't need more gun control. I want to share some of the information coming up. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 75. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 45. For your Wednesday, patchy fog in the morning, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 68. And taking a look at Thursday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with a high near 66.
Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor Premier Landscaping Hardscaping Services in Ozark. Be planning for next spring. You really need to plan ahead if you're going to do it right and do it with the best. Now, I'm not ignorant to the fact that there are a number of different companies out there that, can do a fast and quick job. You give them a call and, maybe they do patios is one of 80 different things that they do. And so they come and do some measurements, and then they, the weekend they run to the big box store and get some pavers and lay them down, and there you go. You have it done. Essentially the sort of thing you could do yourself with product available to you, but you just hire someone else to do it. But if you want it done with the premier products, the premier artist, if you will, behind it, I mean, just the absolute best of the best, then you want Hunter Hardscape and Outdoor. And I recommend if you're going to spend smart money, this is the way to do it. And oftentimes people will say, well, I know we got to put an investment into it, but I don't know if I want to put that much. And then 10 years from now, it's falling apart. If you want it done solid, you want it done right, you want it done impressively, you want Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, the website, hunterhardscapes.com. You can see some of their before and after projects. You can also find them under Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. Federal firearm indictments. Under the U.S. Attorney's Office Project Safe Neighborhoods program are up 292% in the Northern District of Illinois compared to last year through October 31st, 2025, according to federal officials. The number of defendants charged in PSN firearm indictments is up 287% compared to last year. The PSN program is an evidence-based program that focuses enforcement efforts on the most violent offenders while bringing together a broad spectrum of stakeholders to identify the most pressing violent crime problems and develop comprehensive solutions to address them. The expansion implemented the program in parts of 3 Chicago police districts in downtown financial zones and the CTA trains that bring residents and visitors to those areas from every neighborhood of Chicago and from the city's 2 international airports. The expansion by U.S. Attorney Boutros represented the first time anywhere in the country that the PSN program was deployed on mass transit, and the first time in Chicago that the city's downtown economic corridors were given the federal PSN designation. The joint statement made with other Department of Justice law enforcement components, namely the FBI, U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and the DEA and the U.S. Marshal Service, saying combating the epidemic of gun crime and violence is a national priority for this Department of Justice. And it is a top priority of mine as U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, said U.S. Attorney Boutros. It is for this reason I have invested substantial resources into our violent crime section while demonstrating with action that we will strongly support our law enforcement partners and accept their most significant cases for federal prosecution. The results are not only a deepening of relationships with federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, but also a dramatic increase in our prosecutions in high-impact matters. The increased prosecutions are a part of a turnaround that is occurring under U.S. Attorney Boutros, who inherited an office that was down some 50 prosecutors. He said, the impressive results we've been able to achieve in 2025 as an office have been accomplished with far fewer prosecutors and resources than the office has experienced in decades. He said this is also true for the caseloads we're handling in our civil division. I'm proud of the hard work and dedication of our prosecutors in the civil division who are handling a heavy docket that is only growing heavier with fewer resources. The criminal division has also dipped below 90 criminal prosecutors for the first time in decades. The increase in federal firearm indictments corresponds to increased prosecutions as well as other high-impact cases across various federal programs. Overall, federal criminal indictments in all program areas in the Northern District of Illinois in 2025 are up 45% compared to last year. The number of defendants charged in all program areas in 2025 is up 52% compared to last year. And there's more quotes and so forth. Here's just explain what's going on here. This is a U.S. Attorney's Office, the Trump administration. And there is a 290% increase in federal firearm indictments. These are a violation of gun laws. Despite the fact that those offices have less prosecutors than they have in 50 years. A lack of gun control laws are not the problem in this country, and this proves it. The problem we have in this country when it comes to at least one of the main contributors to gun violence is the fact that these criminals have long been able to get away with it without being charged with federal gun charges. Rarely in cities that are run by Democrats are the gun laws that are in place ever even enforced. It is one of the reasons why it is so frustrating, particularly when people on the left who claim that they so desperately want to stop, quote, gun violence. We have to put an end to gun violence. And they will elect people who say we need more laws, and those same people don't even enforce the laws that are currently on the books. It's a scam. It is a total and complete scam. Because the people who claim that they care most about stopping gun violence are the ones who let the people off the hook when they commit gun violence. And here you have in the Trump administration, and this is noteworthy because this is, again, the first time this has been implemented in this particular way, and also covering like transit systems, almost 300% increase in prosecutions. Trust me, this is not because of a 300% increase in crime committed by firearms. This is because of a deliberate approach that is opposite to the way these things are usually dealt with. And that is, particularly with the previous administration, an administration that pushed for more, quote, common sense gun laws, yet refused to prosecute the gun laws or those who violated the gun laws in the first place, including, I mean, what a great symbolism, giving his son Hunter Biden a pardon for violating federal gun laws. I don't know when you people on the left are going to wake up and realize that you get scammed over and over and over again. And this isn't some declaration that the Republican Party this is the problem with the mindset of people. I mean, I guess everyone involved in politics. If you're saying, hey, you're a problem, you by default are believing that then the declaration is the opposite side is correct in everything. And it's not a binary choice. It doesn't mean that you have to support Republicans or become a Trump supporter. But if you truly, genuinely believe in an approach that has an opportunity to diminish violence that is committed with the use of a firearm, and you are supporting the left and you are supporting Democrats, you are doing more harm than good to your cause. And you are being scammed by people who tell you what you want to hear so that they can get elected, but then refuse to prosecute the people who commit the crimes. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, the Pyramid Roofing Company. Hey, did you have that storm at
I
like
I don't think
1:30
so.
this morning?
If I did, I slept right
Oh
through
my
it.
gosh, it was a heck of a storm. I think it was like north of I-44, so I think it was like Polk County and kind of the northern part of Greene, of course, Dallas. And the whole reason I mention this is because right now we're seeing a lot of fluctuating temperatures, and that can be pretty brutal on your roof because that fluctuating temperatures, if your roof is improperly installed or it's just older, whenever we go from, like 40 to 70 back down to 20, and we go through all of that process, that can actually allow for your shingles to shift, and then moisture can get underneath that. So with that being said, if you wake up this morning, or maybe you woke up already, you're on your way to work, and you're like, oh no, there's like yellowing on my ceiling, reach out to the Pyramid Roofing Company. The Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections, and they work with you through the insurance process without making you sign anything. If it's time to have the Pyramid team out to your home, just schedule that free roof inspection with Josh today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
Rude.
Rude.
So rude.
Massachusetts Democrat governor appoints a man to a woman's commission, of course, and
Duh.
it's a woman governor too. The job that the Democrats have done on women to convince them to, it's almost like suicide bombers. Like, how is it that terrorist organizations convince suicide bombers to be suicide bombers? Like, they're destroying themselves. Like, what do they do to the minds of these people? And that is what we observe with the way that the Democrat Party is with some of these women that will literally get out there and argue that there's really no such thing as a woman. It's just whatever you want it to be. That as a human being, as a woman, in a defined manner, they do not exist. Imagine that for a moment. Being so, I'll use the term brainwashed, you can't even define who you are. You'll have these women, one of them's a Supreme Court justice, asked to define herself. Like, what is a woman? That's what you are. What is a woman? Well, I'm not a biologist. You know how screwed up that is? What a royal brainwashing job that is. It is one of the most toxic results of toxic relationship you can have. You hear about these situations where, somebody, she ends up marrying this guy who seemed great at first, and then, more and more, he was cutting her off from her family and convincing her that she shouldn't be associated with us. And then the few times that they are around her, they're like, we don't even know who she is anymore. She doesn't even know who she is anymore. And that's what some of these women have become, out there arguing that as a defined woman, they don't even exist because you cannot define woman. So the Democrat governor of Massachusetts, who is one of the nation's first elected lesbians, appointed a man named Giselle Bird to the commission, and he is now vice chair of the agency's Programming and Planning Committee. The MCSW says on its website that it is an independent state agency charged with reviewing the status of women and girls in Massachusetts and offering policy recommendations that would improve access to opportunities and equality for all. How do you have an agency that is charged with reviewing the status of a category that you claim doesn't have a definition? This is a category that is, or it's an agency charged with reviewing the status of women and girls, yet, according to you, there is no definition. It's whatever a man wants it to be, essentially. That is the definition. If a man says he's a woman, that's what matters. In fact, there is no woman that the left will defend anywhere to the degree that they defend men who claim that they're women. I mean, think about that for a moment. Over the past several years, when it comes to honoring women and standing up for, quote, women's rights, who is it that the left is always standing next to? It's a man who pretends to be a woman. While they trash on actual women like Riley Gaines and others who are like, hey, no, that's not what a woman actually is. Quote, it is an honor and privilege to be able to serve alongside my fellow sister commissioners as the first transgender woman of color on the commission, added Bonus. And I'm so excited for the journey that we will have together. These people are nuts. And when you have nutty people in charge who don't believe that women, by definition, actually exist, that there is no definition, that any man, all he has to do is wave a magic wand of pretend world and say, no, I'm a man or I'm a woman, and those are the, quote, women that Democrats come to defend, these people are nuts. And unfortunately, it is what has become mainstream Democrat Party. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. Today we'll see mostly cloudy skies with a high near 75. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low around 45. For your Wednesday, patchy fog in the morning, otherwise partly sunny with a high near 68. And taking a look at Thursday, showers and possibly a thunderstorm with a high near 66.
Before we went on The Great Escape, Noah Snelson joined us to talk about, I guess, sort of a recruiting but more informational effort in order to help people get involved that may be interested in running for office or they've thought about but have no idea where to start. And I think that lack of knowledge also at times makes the natural hierarchy of things seem insurmountable. And it's very understandable. People aren't unrealistic about when you run for office and that there's certain people in waiting. But when you're talking about local, that's not so much in play. That's not as, I would argue, as prevalent and as difficult to overcome, if it even does exist. And in fact, in some districts, and this may shock people, that sometimes there's a difficulty finding people who know, hey, you could run for this. And so because of that, I guess, conventional wisdom of, well, you have to have been in politics for a while to run for state rep, you end up sort of having the opposite effect, is that
Mhm.
then you end up with no one. It's like really hot girls that they say, I never get out scout to, because people just assume. You know,
That's
you
right.
hear that supermodels say that. Guys never ask me out because they just assume I'm already taken. And these local runs, oftentimes people don't run because they assume, well, I'm not part of the quote political establishment, and so this isn't for me. But you guys are working in order to counter that.
Yeah. So a little bit about who I am and what we're doing so my name is Noah Snelson. I'm a political activist here locally. I've run for office, been involved in Republican politics for many, many years. And yeah, I was that person at one point in
Mm,
time. Several years ago, 6 years ago or so, I ran for Springfield City Council. I had the same thing.
right.
A lot of people, when they get into politics, or run for office, there's really two classes of people who've really prepared for it. They have very definite goals, and it's very prepared. Then you have folks that were like myself that really, I had an inkling I wanted to do
Hmm.
something. I didn't know where to start. And I think of it as for those people out there that, being out of high school and just starting a multi-million-dollar business, you have a concept, you have an idea, but where do you start? I have no idea. So
Right.
politics is the same way. So this is a collaboration between myself, Congressman Burleson is helping with this, Representative Alex Riley. And what we're doing is looking for people to help create a bench of candidates for office, people who maybe want to run for office, specifically in Greene County, but also Southwest Missouri. This isn't by any means to unseat anybody that's currently
Mm.
there. What we want to do is look for people that might fill some of these open seats, or when these seats open up, or they have people sitting in them.
Yeah.
When you start to run for an office, it takes a long time, a year, 2 years of preparation, and we want to make sure people are already there
Yeah.
and not last minute. So this organization is called 417 Conservative Action Network, and we do have a meeting Monday, November 24th. It's going to be from 5:30 to 6 to talk to candidates who might be interested in running for one of those local offices.
Yeah, and I would also note, as I mentioned, that people, speaking to people who have thought, well, I can't do it because I'm not part of the establishment, and saying, hey, yes, you can. That doesn't mean that there aren't tools to be offered by what you may consider to be establishment. What I guess I don't want to make people believe, well, he just said that anyone can do it, and so that means all I got to do is get out and do it. There is still a lot to learn.
There is.
There is so much to learn about what works, what doesn't work. And it doesn't mean that every bit of advice you're going to get is the golden rule. But I would just encourage people who are like, I'm not part of the establishment, but I'm consider myself a Republican, but I'm tired of That doesn't mean that you should go it alone.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So there's when you have a very broad audience that's listening. I had several people reach out to me, not only through the number I'll give in a little bit to come to this meeting, but people who reach out to me personally, who message me. Heck, even my son had one of the students at school
Yeah.
said, "Hey, was your dad on the radio this morning?" So a broad reach. But there are people right now in their car thinking, maybe this is something I've wanted to do, or maybe they've tossed around this idea, or maybe it's the spouse of somebody that that your husband or your wife has kind of talked about this, or a neighbor or a relative or a friend, whatever the case is. We have offices from municipal level, whether it's a city council, your school boards, your county offices, state reps. There's two specific ones there that we're looking for folks in, but those people who are like, I want to do more, I want to give back.
Yeah.
And it's not for the casual person who just jumps in and says,
Yes.
hey, I think I want to run for office, and then they put their name on a ballot and they don't do anything. It's a lot of work, and you really have to be dedicated to a cause and the process that you go through. And so when I talk to candidates, just a small percentage of them actually go through that process of running for office. But again, we want to get people that where they're at. And so if you have questions, you want to know, where do I start? This isn't how to run for office. This is finding people who are interested and then going from there. So
Right.
moving from there. So So yes, people that can self-fund, people that have the opportunity to fundraise, people who can spend time door knocking, who have the availability, once you're an elected official, the most important part, have the time to do that position or that job. And your family life would also be conducive to that. There's a lot of factors that go into that.
Yeah, talk to your family before you make a decision like this.
That's the first thing I tell candidates is
Right.
before you do anything, here's the time commitment. Here's the reality, and make sure your family's okay with it, because your spouse is not okay, your kids aren't okay with that. That might not be the option for you, but it is for a lot of people. And so we really want to foster that and bring those people in and give them an opportunity to see what's available.
And I would also say that, let's say the state rep races, you mentioned a lot of hard work, and it's true. And there's so much talk about money, and well, you have to this and that and so forth. And money is very important, and you do need to raise it. But I think it's most manageable and realistic that as a newcomer, the hard work really can make a massive difference in a state rep
Sure.
race. And the door-to-door stuff. And I've talked to people, I can't tell you how many times people have told me that they voted for the person who came to their door. I mean, that really was how they made their decision when it came to certain local races, more so, that because they cared enough. And if they cared enough to come to my door and the other one did not, that's how they made their decision. And not everyone's that way, obviously. But point being is that hard work can really, really make a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, these state rep races, those are super important, and that is that personable one-on-one relationship you have with people. So you don't have to have millions of dollars to run for office. You just have to have the dedication that I'm willing to go do this. And so speaking of some of those state rep seats, currently we have 2 seats that no Republicans have officially announced in. So if you are in the 136th district, so 136, that's Southeast Springfield, and if your representative is Stephanie Hine, or if you're in the 133rd district, that's Southwest Springfield, and Melanie Stinnett is currently your state representative. Those are seats where Republicans have not announced in those, and there's opportunity to bring people in. So we're actively looking for folks that might be interested. If you're in those specific areas, really, this is a great opportunity for someone like you.
I'm trying to think of mental obstacles to help people get over. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is not an audition call. This isn't, because what I don't want people to think is, well, they say that, and I'm interested, and I've never really done this before, but if somebody throws their hat in the ring that's well known, I'm going to be brushed to the side. That's not what this is.
Nope.
It's not American Idol. It's not America's Got Talent.
That's right. That's right. This is just to gauge interest of people who are stepping into that arena for the first time, so that they can have a discussion with people that can help them or assist them or guide them in that process and answer some of those questions. Look, when I was a candidate for the first time, I didn't understand, well, what do I need to do? How do I file a campaign donation? If I get a donation, what do I do? What do I need to put on my signs? Why do I
not put on my signs?
Yeah, well, that's also very important. But that comes later. But there's so many questions that you have, and there's nobody to bounce it off of. And so a lot of people do reach out to those elected officials. They reach out to friends. They reach out to the party, and that's great. We just want to have an opportunity to bring those people together in one setting to answer some of those questions, and also to build that bench as we start to step into election seasons. That we know, hey, we have these 3 people that are interested. Now, we're not going to tell you, hey, we're picking you over you. That's not our position. Our position is to try to find people that are interested, guide them on that, and give them those opportunities to have those answers filled.
And I would say also for those folks who complain that, well, it's always the same people that run and get support, this is an opportunity for you to make the landscape a little bit different, potentially.
No, 100%. Again, when I ran for office, I just didn't. My background's law enforcement. I thought during my time, I thought that crime in Springfield was a major issue. It's something I wanted to take my talents, bring to the table, and see if I could fix. And I was frustrated. That's what drove me to running for office. And everybody has that thing. And yes, if you're that person who's frustrated, it's the same people. Great. Here's an opportunity to do that. If you're someone who is in business or retired, or you have the opportunity to go back, give back to your community in a way that you're not currently doing, this is that opportunity. This isn't just for the average person. There's people out here that are thinking about this that never in a million years thought they'd be involved in politics. But come fill it out. Come see what that is. So if you are interested in that, you will need to RSVP, and I'm going to give you 2 ways to contact us. The first one is contact me by phone. That number is 417-597-3227. Or you can visit our Facebook page. It is 417 Conservative Action Network. And if you're driving, you couldn't write that down, go back and listen to the KSGF podcast. You can pull that information back up. But again, that number is 417-597-3227. And our meeting is Monday, November 24th from 5:30 to 6 here in Springfield. But you will have to call an RSVP to get the location for that. Obviously, there are people that reach out from last time. Some of those people were a little bit more nefarious in their meaning for it.
Can't imagine.
But we had a lot of people, several people you never would have thought wanted to reach out. And I think
that's awesome.
It's going to be a great event. So if you have any questions, reach out to either one of those two or go back and listen to the podcast to get that information.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, it wouldn't hurt to have morning show listeners elected in office, I'd say.
No, listen, this is
from my own perspective.
You have a great audience, Nick. I missed you when you guys were out of town.
Well, the remedy to that is join us next time.
I very well might. I just got to convince the wife that we should do that. But no, you have a great audience. It's a broad audience. It's a diverse audience. And there are people out there that I know that are interested in stuff like this. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to try it. It just takes a little bit of your time to see whether or not this is something you want to do.
Nelson, thank you. And we'll make sure to get all that. Where will we have that? People can find it.
I will have it at ksgf.com under the must-read headlines, and then I will also link all of that information under this specific podcast for Hour 3.
Okay, awesome. Sounds good, Noah. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Perfect.
it. And we'll see you again soon. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. She's awesome. If realtors wore capes, if only one realtor wore a cape, it should be Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. If you're looking to buy or sell, one of the great compliments that come along with her is her knowledge and relationships with people in home improvement industries. Now, this is relevant because so often when it comes time for those, the selling of the home, the person who is looking to buy it says, yeah, all right, we'll buy it for your asking price. But due to the inspection we had, here are a few things that we would like done. And you're suddenly tasked with finding people to do things that you've never really researched before, so you don't know. And you go to, social media and you ask and you get 80 different answers. And maybe some of them are like, oh, I use this person and they're really good. But does that I mean, so that was their one experience. That doesn't mean there isn't someone better out there. Emily Johnson, because daily, every day, she's dealing with this stuff. So she knows who's good. She knows who is timely, who's not going to rip you off and take advantage of the fact that you're, in a position in which you need to have this work done. That is just one of the many benefits that come along with Emily Johnson that's not always there with every realtor. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Trump yesterday announced that Americans could see payment checks funded by tariff revenues as soon as next year, promising that hundreds of millions of dollars in tariff money would be distributed as dividends by mid-2026. Quote, we've taken in hundreds of millions of dollars in tariff money. We're going to be issuing dividends probably by the middle of next year, maybe a little bit later than that. The president first floated the idea last week, saying he would use tariff revenue to send $2,000 payments to low and middle income Americans, with any remaining funds directed towards paying down the nation's soaring debt. Now, I'm a very strong believer in that all of this should go to pay down the debt for a number of reasons that we've talked about before. I think that there is some political calculation here. I believe that Trump likes to throw things out there in which there are a number of potential outcomes, and he calculates that pretty much any outcome will benefit the administration's efforts in order to get America on the right track. I don't think he nearly concerns himself with the debt issues that a lot of other Americans do. And I think he genuinely believes that he is going to get, and arguably, he has credibility in this, America on a real strong and deep economic track, that the paying down of the debt is something that's going to come long term. And so these tariff and stuff that really this is minimal when it comes to impact on the debt, that paying off or down, minimizing the debt, that this is almost irrelevant in that context. And so giving Americans some of it back, obviously, he sees that as a win because Americans are going to get some of this back. But also, I think he suspects that there's a good chance Democrats are going to challenge it, because Democrats are increasingly emotional and short-sighted and will not necessarily appreciate how bad that will make them look going into the midterm elections. And I suspect that what Donald Trump is seeing as a benefit for not him so much, but politically Republicans in the midterms, is to have Democrats actively out there fighting against Americans getting rebate checks, or however they're phrased, to the tune of $2,000, while Republicans are running against them for the continued control of Congress, and that there really is not a better positioning in his mind, and what he believes will be a miscalculation by the Democrats based off their consistency and miscalculations, that they will actively fight against this, and he sees that as something that will be beneficial for Republicans in the midterm elections. Quick break, more ahead. All right, Glenn Beck's coming up next, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I will talk with you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.